Hey everyone, it's Emily, and today I'm doing my favorite books of 2019. So I'm kind of dividing them into a few categories. So I have a couple of honorable mentions, and then I didn't distinguish between my number 10 through 6, so I actually ordered my top 5, but for 10 through 6, it's so hard to actually really distinguish between those. They were so different, and it's just kind of hard to really get those in a good order. So I just kind of have a 6 through 10 category that I won't necessarily mention in any particular order, and then I'll do a top 5. So let's get into it. I'll start with a couple of honorable mentions. One is the Wishland series by Susan Dennard. I am caught up in this, and I've listened to all of them except for Sight Witch, the novella. I've listened to all of them on audio, and I only put this as a honorable mention instead of fully on my list because I really need to kind of reread to fully absorb this series. I need to reread them physically in order to do that. But I absolutely love this series, and so I wanted to mention it, but I need to kind of reprocess it to get as much out of it as I want to. So that's one honorable mention. The other honorable mention is one that I'm only doing as an honorable mention because I'm not quite done with it. In fact, I'm not even quite halfway done with it, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it, so it'll probably be somewhere on my list of favorites next year, probably, and that is the Starless C by Erin Morgenstern. Actually, the dust jacket is right here, so I can put that on real quick. I have it by my nightstand, so I'm taking the dust jacket off, but I'm almost halfway through this and thoroughly enjoying it. I have not read The Night Circus, so I really didn't have a sense of what I was getting into in terms of her writing style that I had heard was just so beautiful but very unique. And I'm along for the ride on this one. I'm in it. Like I love this world. It's super interesting. It's definitely very whimsical, and there's just a lot of weird stuff happening. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So this one might be on my list of favorites next year. So I'll now get to kind of the 6 to 10 range that I'm not really specifically ordering, but definitely wanted to mention. So I'll get into those. So one of the ones that I knew early on this year that would probably claim a spot on this list is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This is an incredible book. I also loved The Hate You Give, which was her first novel, and I'm just in love with her writing and her characters and just the way she writes her characters and allows you to kind of get into their head and really come to care for everyone in the story and in Bree, the main character's life, is just incredible. It's funny, it's thought-provoking, it's hard-hitting. I loved everything about this. And this follows Bree, who's the main character on the cover here, and she wants to be a rapper. Her father was a rapper but died when she was a kid, and so she kind of wants to carry on his legacy. And her family is struggling financially, and there's a lot of different things going on with her family, and so she's kind of navigating that as well as trying to see how far she can go in her rap career to kind of help bring in some money for her family. And I just, oh God, I love this. I love this book so much. Read it, please. Also in this section is The Martian by Andy Weir. So this one was just so much fun. It's so well researched. It's incredibly interesting. I mean, the story is the story is about an astronaut who gets stranded on Mars, and it's just his quest for survival. And then it also follows some people back on Earth who are trying to see if they can actually go get the astronaut who is stranded on Mars. And so I mean, in that sense, it's not a complex story, and I mean, really it just comes down to a story of his survival and what he does on a day-to-day basis to survive. But the way it's written, Mark Watney is one of my favorite characters ever. He is so funny, so snarky. I loved following him. And I also just thought the thought process that he went through and what he did to survive and just kind of what he had to think about in order to make sure that he could have shelter and food was just so interesting. And you could tell that Andy Weir just did so much research and just had so much knowledge about what it would be like to be on a mission to Mars and survive on Mars, and what NASA would do, the lengths NASA and the world would go to kind of get an astronaut back. It was just so much fun. I was entertained the entire time, even though it was just kind of day in the life kind of stuff, but it's day in the life of someone on Mars. So yeah, it was just so interesting and so funny, and I just had a great time reading this. Another sci-fi that I have kind of in my 6 to 10 range is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I listened to this one on audio, and not only was the audiobook delightful, I'll talk about that in a separate video where I talk about my favorite audiobooks of the year. So the audiobook being great also helped, but I just got sucked into this world so fast. I mean, this world was so much fun. It was literally jarring. So I was listening to this on my commute, and it was literally jarring to get to work and kind of have to take myself out of the story and be back in the real world where I had things to do at work. I mean, I was just so sucked in. I was just entertained from page one. It was also just an interesting look at Earth, just his life on the outside of this video game. And just the things that happen in this video game are just so interesting and so well thought through, and I was just hooked. So it follows a guy, so it takes place in, I think, the 2040s, so kind of near-ish future, not too far off, but a bit of ways off. It follows Wade, and things are not in a great place on Earth, I'll say. And he is very poor. He doesn't have a great family situation. Basically his only solace is in video games, and he spends a lot of time in the Oasis. And that is a kind of just entire world, it's kind of an alternate reality, that just kind of a whole virtual world that is created. He literally goes to school in this virtual world. That's just where he spends most of his time, because he doesn't really have anything else in his life that he wants to focus on, and doesn't really want to kind of see how awful things are around him. So he spends a lot of time in this game, and the game's creator dies. But before he dies, he kind of places, it's called Halliday's egg. Halliday's the creator, and he places this egg in the game, in this virtual world, and basically says that the first person to find this egg will get his inheritance, will get his fortune. And so it's a race to find that egg. And I love this book so much. Another sci-fi on this list is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I read this one recently, listened to the audiobook, and this one was so much fun. I also was gripped with this one from the very beginning. It follows a guy who is going to just run an errand for his family on a family night. He's going to grab some ice cream and is kidnapped, and when he wakes up, the life that he thought he was living no longer exists, and he is still himself, but he has lived a very different life than what he remembers from before he woke up. And so it's him trying to figure out the mystery of what happened to him, how his interests and his research and his professional life kind of interact with what happened to him. And it's basically him trying to find his family again and basically get back to his own world that he is so sure exists despite all the evidence around him. It was just fun. It was so entertaining, and it's definitely also a lot of fun and interesting discussions about, what's important in life, and, what you think back to as you live your life and, get older and get more experience with things. Kind of, how do you wish your life had gone you know, do you regret making some of the decisions that you've made, and what would it be like to live a different life and kind of live the life you think you would have wanted or might have wanted at one point. It's just interesting discussions in here as well, on top of just pure fun. And I love science thrillers is one thing, or sci-fi thrillers is one of the things that I'm learning this year, and this one was a really, really good one. I've not read Recursion, but that one is on my list to read at some point. So the only one that I don't have a physical copy of is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. I listened to this one on audio, and I just fell in love with this story. So I enjoyed the first one in the Montague siblings series, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. That one was fun. I also listened to that one on audio. I also do happen to have a physical copy of it. And that one was fun. It was super entertaining. But I adored the second book just on a whole new level. I love Felicity. She's one of my favorite characters ever. And it follows her wanting to study medicine, but living in a time, so it's set in England, and I think it was 1800s kind of time setting, and women really can't study medicine, but that's all she wants to do with her life and all she ever has wanted to do with her life. And you know, she's trying to get into different medical schools, and you know, she ends up, you know, in that process she ends up just going on an adventure that involves piracy and these amazing fictional creatures that also come into play. I mean, it's wild. It's just so much fun. It's super fast paced. It's super entertaining. I love the characters, and I definitely want a physical copy of this because there are so many great lines from Felicity and some of the other characters that I would love to highlight and annotate. Yeah, so that one is definitely among the favorites for this year. So now for my top 5, and these I do have ordered. Number 5, I have The Diviners by Libba Bray. Oh my god. Okay, this is another one that I listened to on audio, and yeah, I'm in love. I am in love with the series. I want to continue, and I love this one for a lot of reasons. Not only because the audiobook just kind of takes it to a whole new level, and January Lavoie is a god amongst mortals, but the characters in here are all so lovable and so interesting. And I don't necessarily mean lovable in that they are only good, like there's a lot of gray in these characters, but Libba Bray does such a good job writing just the complexity of those characters, but still making you just fall in love with them. It's a super interesting plot that involves Evie and another set of people that she meets who are diviners, who have these special gifts, and Evie's gift is to be able to touch objects and kind of see some of their history and see some of the things that are connected to that object. And she uses this power to help solve a series of murders that are happening in New York in the 1920s. And the environment is everything that I was hoping it would be, just the fun 1920s, you know, New York City. Like, it is just everything that you picture, and she's just does such a great job of writing it. She writes about everything that's going on in the 1920s in New York. Like, she writes about a whole bunch of different settings. Like, it's not just one picture of New York in the 1920s that she writes about, but she writes about a lot of different stuff going on at the time, including racism and just a lot of stuff going on. This book talks a lot about racism, which is another thing I appreciate, because there's a lot in this book that I think is still just so poignant and so relevant. But it's also just a super fast-paced, fun, interesting plot about them trying to solve these murders. It involves supernatural things, and I mean, it's so much fun. So much fun. So this one is number 5. Number 4 is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, and this is the only romance on this list. I don't read a ton, which is also part of why it's the only romance on this list. And this one, I can understand some people who are saying that it's way over the top in some cases, but I loved this book. I just had such a fun time reading it that just the entertainment factor really made this one stick out for me this year. This follows the first son of the first female U.S. president, who was elected in 2016, and the one of the princes of England, and it's, you know, some things happen and they need to kind of publicly reconcile by pretending to be friends, but in this fake friendship, it starts to become more. And I just love the banter between these two. I love the emails and the texts, and I love all the I also love all the other characters that are just around them as well. They're just super fun, witty, snarky characters. And yeah, it can definitely be over the top, but it was just so entertaining. I was laughing out loud the entire time. So yeah, definitely had fun with this one. So for number 3, I'm kind of including this whole series because I don't necessarily have a favorite of this series, and I really feel like this series all ties together so well, but I definitely want to give a nod to this whole series as my number 3, and that is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. And this is the Arc of the Scythe series is what I'm talking about here. I've mentioned this one plenty of times as I've been reading it this year. I recently read The Toll and loved it. And yeah, this one follows a world where humans don't die. We just kind of advanced beyond the point of needing people physically dying, and but we're not off planet. We still have a confined and limited set of resources, and so we need scythes who are sanctioned by society to kill people to kind of maintain a certain level of population so that people can still have the resources they need. And it follows scythe politics that are incredibly interesting. It follows kind of the AI in this world that is super interesting to follow, and really, you know, is one of the reasons that society has been able to advance so far. But it also, the AI is not supposed to interact with the scythe world, and so it needs, but as the scythe world kind of really starts, and the politics behind that world starts to influence humans in a lot of ways, this AI kind of needs to figure out what to do in order to kind of help save humanity. And it's just a fascinating and well-written series. I'm definitely going to be rereading this one, and I loved it. Number 2 on my list is also a series, and I also didn't want to pick because I loved all of them so much, and they're all so different, which is also why it's hard to pick between the 3 in this series. I mean, they're very different books, and they don't necessarily follow one, you know, progression of events. It follows a bunch of different characters in a bunch of different ways, and you know, they're very different. But my number 2 is the Wayfarer series that starts with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and I also listened to these on audio, and I'm definitely going to be rereading these so many times and annotating these as well. I fell in love with this world so fast. So I love all of the characters. So this one follows a crew who are on the Wayfarer, which is the ship, and follows them as they take on a job to, you know, build some basically highways in space that connect different areas of space. And you know, the other one follows 2 characters. Those kind of happen after the events of this book, but that also follows 2 different characters after this time period, but also follows some of their backstory. And the third one is just kind of different vignettes from around this world, and they're all amazing. I love her writing. I love the way she makes you fall in love with these characters and fall in love with these worlds. And you know, it's about found family, it's about friendship, it's about love, it's about acceptance, both accepting yourself and accepting other people. And I mean, she just writes about everything, and she also just kind of talks a lot about how we treat other people and how we relate to each other in this series, and it's wonderful. It's so wonderful. So this series is number 2 on my list, and number 1 on my list is one that I finished recently and was just blown away by, and that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. This follows Liesel, and she is living in World War II in Germany. She's taken in by a German family after her mother is taken away. Her brother kind of dies in the process of then getting to this other family, and her family, it's just about her family kind of surviving during World War II and the things that they have to do to, you know, stay alive themselves and kind of get by, but they're also protecting someone in their basement. And so it's also his story, and just, it's beautiful. I loved the writing so much, and it really brought these characters to life, but also just in such a unique and interesting way, and I loved it. So yeah, this was my favorite book of the year, just because it was so well written, so emotional, and also just was kind of a great ode to stories and how powerful stories and books can be to people, and what a light they can be to people in the darkest times. And I just, my heart. I loved it. So this was my favorite book of the year. So that's it for this video. Those are my top books of the year, and let me know if you have read any of these or if you've loved any of these. Be sure to subscribe. I've done Bookmas all month, so be sure to catch my other Bookmas videos, and just me heading into the new year with all of my new reading goals and plans, so be sure to subscribe. I'll also link my Twitter and Instagram down below. I still have not yet created a separate Twitter and Instagram, but that's happening. Promise. And I'll also link my climate channel below. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.